Part 3. Good man, he has a golden finger. Author, Jonghu Buletin. Chapter 21. Regarding the evidence of Xie Ting's identity, Xie Tingzhou had naturally prepared it for a long time. After he landed in Beijing, he arranged for his life manager to reapply for his previous identity certificate. After comparing the police's fingerprints, Xie Tingzhou had naturally obtained it. Belongs to Xie Tunan's identity. This is very simple for Xie Tingzhou. Huan Yu, bring the information from the police station and show it to Jiao Yu. The housekeeper Huan Yu quickly came over with a file bag. She opened the file bag with white gloves and handed the personal information inside to Xie Jiao Yu. Miss, this is the statement issued by the police station to Mr. Xie. After Mr. Xie was taken to the UK 19 years ago, the police received a report from your mother and eventually found your father's clothes under the Shangjing Bridge. Fingerprints were always recorded at the police station, so after fingerprint comparison, Mr. Xie Jiayu listened to the housekeeper explain the situation. After opening the information, she found that it was indeed the information issued by the Shangjing City Police Department. It also contained fingerprint comparison and the solution of Xie Tunan's disappearance. The photo above of my father from 19 years ago is exactly the same as the person sitting in front of me. Even if it is a photo with a sense of age, you can tell that the person above is the same person as the person in front of you. Of course, if you are worried, we can do a DNA test, which will be more intuitive. Xie Tingzhou found that his daughter was a cold type. Even after she recognized her identity, she was not as excited as ordinary people. Like him, she would not show fear even if she was overwhelmed by the mountain. In fact, how could Xie Jiayu not be excited? She was just accustomed to a life of expressionless faces for a long time. Even though she was extremely excited at this time, even the black dress could hardly cover her heartbeat. Her face was still cold, but she really looked like Xie Tingzhou. No need, I'm sure you are Xie Tunan. After all, no one will lie to me with this. After experiencing what happened to Su Yunhan, Xie Jiayu didn't know what value she still had in herself that would be taken advantage of by the other party. At this time, she felt a bit like a broken person. Jiayu, I will prove to you that I am your biological father, and I have been absent from your and your brother's lives for so many years. I will definitely compensate you and be a good father. Xie Tingzhou couldn't see Xie Jiayu's worry, so he immediately reassured and waved to Lan Huan who was standing aside. Lan Huan had been waiting for his godfather's instructions, but now he trotted over. Jiayu, this is Lan Huan, the godson I recognized after returning to China. If you have anything that is inconvenient to tell Dad, you can tell your brother Lan Huan. When Lan Huan, who was trotting over, heard what his godfather said, he immediately smiled warmly at his sister. Hello Jiayu, I am Lan Huan, your godfather's new godson. I am 27 years old this year, 7 years older than you. Just call me brother Lan Huan. I can't do anything else. I just want to eat, drink and have fun. I have a set. If you want to play, my brother will take you with him wherever he goes. Lan Huan is an only child and has never been called an older brother, but if there really is a sister like Xie Jiayu, it is not impossible. Who doesn't want a beautiful sister? Xie Jiayu looked at Lan Huan and heard that the other party said that he was 27 years old, but he called the young Xie Tingzhou his godfather. Now he felt a little bit that Mr. Xie might really be his father. She nodded, but she didn't reject this god brother. Hello, brother Lan Huan. When Lan Huan heard that he was called brother, he was so happy that his face lit up with joy. I quickly touched around on my body, not to mention, I really touched a gadget. Hello sister, I'm here so abruptly that I don't have anything to give you. This jade pendant of mine was a bodhisattva my grandparents prayed to in front of the Buddha when I was just born. It was specially designed to keep me safe and ensure that I grow up happily over the years. Brother is very happy to see you today. This Bodhisattva gave it to you. Although it is not a valuable thing, I have been wearing it for 27 years, so it is effective. I only hope that my sister will be healthy and prosperous in the future. Xie Jiayu originally wanted to refuse the Jade Bodhisattva who had been close to her for many years, but she could only accept it when she saw Xie Tingzhou nodding. Thank you, Brother Lan Huan. She could feel Lan Huan's enthusiasm and kindness, and he looked at her the same way she looked at her brother, which made Xie Jiayu relax unconsciously. Looking at this scene, Xie Tingzhou knew that he was right to take Lan Huan with him. This is what Xie Tingzhou wants. Xie Jiayu has been imprisoned for 2 years. On the surface, there seems to be no problem, but if anyone is imprisoned for such a long time, it will have some mental impact. Lan Huan loves to play, so naturally he is the best to accompany Xie Jiayu. Good candidate. With Lan Huan as a pistachio, Xie Jiayu was not so wary of Xie Tingzhou. She originally wanted to ask if Xie Tingzhou in front of her was really his father, why didn't he go to his mother immediately, but now she thought of her own affairs. Where's Su Yunhan? She asked. When she went downstairs, she saw the bodyguards in black suits in the hall. She knew that her father must have met Su Yunhan before he could come here. Maybe, the things between her and Su Yunhan had also been revealed by her father. Know the cleanness. That beast, Godfather arranged him to live in the St. Paul garden next door. Lan Huan gave the answer. He knew the role he needed to play now. Naturally, he wanted to make his sister and Godfather close to each other, so he spoke for Xie Tingzhou at this time. Xie Tingzhou also appreciated Lan Huan's understanding and nodded. Well, how to deal with this person in the future is up to your arrangement. A lot of words were omitted in this, but Xie Jiayu felt that her father was protecting her. After all, the things Su Yunhan did to her were not worthy of being mentioned, but the father in front of her didn't seem to care at all and even supported her. But for Su Yunhan, Xie Jiayu said. Then I want to see him, okay. Of course, at any time, any idea proposed by Xie Jiayu would not be rejected by Xie Tingzhou. Of course. Xie Tingzhou nodded, and then took Xie Jiayu out of the villa. When he was walking forward, he suddenly heard a humming sound. Xie Jiayu turned her head and found that the maid was covered by the mouth by the bodyguard in a black suit, but she was still struggling frantically. She seemed to want to stop Xie Jiayu from leaving the villa. Don't worry, my bodyguards won't hurt them, just let them rest for a while. As Xie Tingzhou said this, the maid was whimpering, and the next moment the bodyguard stabbed her in the neck with a machete, and then she fell on the bodyguard with soreness and was taken away by the bodyguard. All this happened in an instant, and Xie Jiayu just watched like this, and didn't stop it. In this villa, everyone's existence is to monitor her, prevent her from leaving the villa, and monitor her every word and action. Sometimes even who she calls will be reported to Su Yunhan by the maid. Let's go. When she turned away from the maid and walked towards the door, this time there were bodyguards in black suits standing on both sides, but no one would stop her way. When she stepped out of the villa, Xie Jiayu suddenly felt like a caged bird released from a cage. She stood at the door and suddenly turned her head to look at Xie Tingzhou beside her. Dad. She gently called out the name that should have been called out 19 years ago. Xie Tingzhou was stunned, and then he smiled, his amber eyes shining. Yeah, he replied. Xie Jiayu stood beside him, slightly raised her head, looking at this father who seemed to have walked out of an old photo, not knowing what she wanted to confirm. Dad, are you here to take me home? She stretched out her hand hesitantly, as if she wanted to touch the corner of Xie Tingzhou's clothes, but she retracted her hand. The expectation in her eyes made Xie Tingzhou reach out and hold her soft hand directly. The hand belonging to her father was hot and wide, and it directly wrapped Xie Jiayu's hand in it and held it tightly. Yes, Jiayu, I'm here to take you home. Dad wants to tell you that I'm sorry. Dad shouldn't have been late for so long, and let Jiayu grow up. I even failed to protect Jiayu well. This is Dad's fault. Dad will definitely protect Jiayu well in the future, as well as mom and brother. Our family will be together well. Xie Zhou bowed his head slightly and promised his daughter. He likes a warm family, and naturally likes the preference brought by blood relationship. This is the only emotion that can be left when all external factors are retreated. Xie Jiayu, whose hand was tightly held, looked at the young father who felt a little guilty in front of her. She couldn't say the words of forgiveness. For so many years, her mother had worked hard for her and her brother, and she and her brother were panicked when her mother had a disease. It seemed that if there was such a person around, everything would be different. But Xie Jiayu found that she hated the person in front of her, just like her mother had been unwilling to admit that her father's disappearance was death. The police said at the time that generally, those who had been missing for more than a year and whose broken mobile phones and clothes were found under the bridge had almost no chance of survival. Even so, my mother always insisted that my father was just missing, not dead. And now, he is really back. Even though it was 19 years late, Xie Jiayu had to admit it. She missed this person, and she was looking forward to seeing this person, because my mother said a long time ago that my father was a very good person. My mother said how much my father was looking forward to the birth of her and my brother, and that my father named her and my brother Jiayu and Zeng, and that after they were born, my father coaxed them to sleep and eat milk powder day and night. At this moment, the father that my mother once said seemed to have the most real existence all of a sudden. Dad, it's great that you can come back. She smiled, her eyes were full of tears, and with her words, tears fell uncontrollably, frightening Xie Zhou to wipe her tears in a hurry, and Lan Huan on the side also hurriedly handed her tissues. But Xie Jiayu still smiled, letting the person in front of her wipe her tears in a panic, but her heart walked out of this villa with others for the first time, the villa that imprisoned her for 2 years. She is free. She is really free. Good man, he has a golden finger. Author, Zhanghu Buletin Jian. Chapter 22. When Xie Zhou saw Xie Jiayu crying, he felt terrible and was almost at a loss. This kind of heartache from blood relationship made him feel so gentle when wiping Xie Jiayu's tears, as if he was touching something fragile. The same was true for Lan Huan on the side. As the only child in the family, he was a tough boy, so he naturally had no chance to coax a girl to cry. That's right, Lan Huan was 27 years old this year and had been single since birth. How could he have such close contact with a girl? He and Xie Zhou both held tissues and wiped Xie Jiayu's tears, which made Huo Feng, who followed him, laugh and cry. However, when he met Xie Jiayu's tearful eyes, he seemed to understand why the other party was crying. Huo Feng suddenly looked back at the magnificent villa. Perhaps for many girls from poor families, what they want is to live in a villa like this, but for some moons that should have been hanging in the sky, being locked in a cage will only make the moon turn into a dull stone in the end. Leaving the villa without the supervision of the housekeeper and maid was freedom for Xie Jiayu, the first freedom in 2 years. He stood there, rubbing his hands at his side. For some reason, he wanted to go over and wipe Xie Jiayu's tears, but he didn't have the opportunity or the identity. All he could do was stand there and watch the bright moon finally being carefully lifted up and then regain its light. Don't cry, Daddy is here. Daddy will stay by your and your mother's side in the future and won't go anywhere. Even if he goes out, he will take you and your mother with him, okay? Don't cry. Xie Zhou lowered his head and coaxed his daughter softly, his amber eyes full of heartache and self-blame. Xie Jiayu let him wipe the tears from her face, and at this moment, she pulled the corner of Xie Zhou's clothes and nodded. Well, don't cry anymore. She said so, but her tears kept falling from her eyes, which made Xie Zhou feel even more distressed. Finally, he couldn't help but stop wiping Xie Jiayu's tears. He hugged this wronged daughter into his arms, buried Siejiayu's face in his chest, and let the tears fall on his heart. At that moment, Siejiayu finally reached out and hugged Sietingsu's back. Then everyone stood at the door and heard Siejiayu's crying like a collapse. It was not the kind of cautious crying before, but a complete collapse. The crying was bitter, and people couldn't help but want to cry when they heard it. Dad's arms were so broad and so safe. Just listening to Sietingsu's heartbeat, Siejiayu couldn't help crying out all her grievances. There are probably two places in the world where you can cry, one is the toilet, and the other is Dad's chest. Siejiayu never understood it before, but now when she was hugged by her father and cried wantonly, she realized that her father's chest was such a safe place. All the things she had undertaken before, after meeting her father, seemed to become impossible to bear. Tears of grievance, tears of pain, and tears of happiness mixed together and fell into Sietingsu's chest. It was obviously wet, but it burned Sietingsu's heart. Okay, Dad is here, Dad is here. Wanting to say comforting words, it seemed that everything was meaningless. Only the sentence of Dad is here was left, as if only the sentence could make Siejiayu feel at ease, and there was no need to use too many words of comfort. This sentence was enough to let Siejiayu let go of all her heart. Lan Huan stood aside, watching the godfather carefully hug his sister in his arms. Obviously, the godfather had a young appearance, but at this moment Lan Huan really saw the heartache of a father for his daughter. Thinking of everything Siejiayu had experienced, Lan Huan felt uncomfortable and his eyes were red silently. The villa area was originally sparsely populated, so even if someone was crying violently at the door of the villa, no one would know. Siejiayu cried in Sietingsu's arms for a long time, as if she had collapsed. When her tears seemed to have dried up, she raised her head from her father's arms a little embarrassedly. Her phoenix eyes, which were exactly the same as Sietingsu's, were now red, like a little rabbit. When she looked at Sietingjo again, his eyes were also red, and the two looked even more similar. Dad. This time, she shouted out the name that should be called Sietingjo without hesitation. Yes. Sietingjo also let go of Siejiayu, his eyes full of kindness. Let's go see Suyunhan. As she said this, she restrained all her emotions, as if the person who just collapsed and cried was not her, and became cold again, but Sietingjo reached out and held her hand. Let's go, Dad will take you to see Suyunhan. Dad will listen to you on how to punish this person later. Pulling Siejiayu into the car, Lan Huan was the driver this time. Although it was the first time to drive such a Hummer, Lan Huan was not excited at all. He looked at his brother sitting next to him and felt that his brother was secretly looking at his godfather and sister in the rearview mirror. It started. Sister, sit tight. This is my first time driving a Hummer, so I'm a little nervous. Godfather, sit tight too. Lan Huan deliberately said to the father and daughter behind him in a brisk voice, and the atmosphere in the car suddenly became relaxed. St. Paul's garden is right next to Jiaolongting. It only takes 10 minutes to drive there. Siejiayu got in the car and realized that she was a little embarrassed, especially when she saw the tear stains on Sietingsu's clothes. Know what to say. There was silence in the car, but 10 minutes later, everyone arrived at St. Paul's garden again. When Sietingjo got out of the car and put his hand on the roof of the car to protect Siejiayu, Siejiayu realized that this was what her father had always cared about. That beast Suyunhan is inside. Lan Huan affectionately called Suyunhan a beast, and Siejiayu did not object. She had no unnecessary feelings for Suyunhan. She was probably grateful that Suyunhan saved her mother at first, but later these gratitudes were wiped out. Yes, she looked at the huge white building in front of her. This villa was like a church, full of holiness. Sietingjo noticed Siejiayu's uneasiness and stretched out his arm. Don't be afraid, Dad is here. Xie Jiayu just hugged Xie Tingzhu's arm. Although there was still a sense of distance between the two, it was enough to see Xie Jiayu's trust in Xie Tingzhu. The group of people arrived at the door of the villa. The bodyguards in black suits nodded and saluted Xie Tingzhu and the others. The person who came out was the housekeeper Xia Jiakai. "Sir, the doctor is consulting inside." Su Yunhan's painful moans could be heard from the door. It had only been an hour since Xie Tingzhu and Lan Huan left here. Su Yunhan was beaten and covered with injuries, so it was normal for him to find a doctor. Yes, Xie Tingzhu nodded and then walked inside. Xie Jiayu also heard Su Yunhan's painful wailing. When she walked in, she saw a huge golden birdcage. This birdcage filled the entire living room. It was extremely luxurious, but also had a cold feeling. There were several people in the cage. They seemed to be checking on one person, and they could hear Su Yunhan's painful wails. "This is a golden birdcage. Dad bought it for you to keep as a pet." Xie Tingzhu noticed Xie Jiayu's gaze and explained. Hearing this, Xie Jiayu still didn't understand what her father meant. Looking at the huge golden birdcage in front of her, and then looking at Su Yunhan who seemed to be in pain inside, she realized that her father seemed to be a person with a temper, and he would retaliate in kind. She was imprisoned by Su Yunhan in Jie Longting Villa for 2 years. Xie Haoyu did not expect that her father actually built such a golden birdcage and wanted to imprison Su Yunhan. This father who has not appeared for 19 years seems to be more powerful than he imagined. Whether it's the bodyguards in black suits, the huge golden birdcage in front of him, or the housekeepers that ordinary people can't afford, it's enough to prove that Dad seems to be more powerful than he thought. It is against the law to imprison others. She couldn't help but pinch her father's arm to remind him. She finally got her father back, and she wanted to live a happy life with her mother and brother. She couldn't let her father go to jail for such a bad guy. "I didn't imprison him." Su Yunhan took the initiative to go in for his parents. "This golden birdcage has no locked door. No one will stop him if he wants to leave." Xie Tingzhu explained to his daughter seriously, but when Xie Jiayu heard these words, she understood what his father meant. "Is it not because of my mother and younger brother that I stayed in that villa in the past 2 years?" She was excited in her heart. As long as she knew her father was fine, she turned to look at Su Yunhan, who was screaming in the golden birdcage. "What's wrong with him? Why is he called like this?" Su Yunhan was surrounded by people. He was suffering from physical pain at this time, but he didn't know that the moon he had always wanted to pick off had already come here and saw him in his most embarrassing state. "You were beaten. My godfather knew that he was bullying you, so he couldn't hold back and beat him up. I didn't expect that he was so weak to resist the beating. This little injury is like this, it's like a ghost." Lan Huan was furious and explained the situation in 2 or 3 sentences. Xie Jiayu nodded, somewhat understanding, but looked at Xie Tingzhu with a bit of admiration, because she did not expect that such a young father would beat someone for herself, and Su Yunhan looked miserable. Several people inside were still checking Su Yunhan's condition, but the housekeeper Xia Jiakai spoke with a complicated expression. "After Mr. Lan left, we asked the doctor from the bodyguard company to check Su Yunhan's body. There were skin injuries on his face and body, but his legs were severely swollen after being kicked by Mr. Lan. The doctor came after checking it. They said that the place seemed to have been kicked to pieces by Master Lan. Now a group of people were checking Su Yunhan's treasure, so they formed a group." Xie Tingzhu didn't expect this news, and Xie Jiayu was even more shocked. Her eyes couldn't help but widen, and then both of them couldn't help but look at Lan Huan. Lan Huan felt that he was more unjust than Doi, and his eyes widened in disbelief. "What? I kicked that bastard to pieces? Isn't this humming porcelain?" You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Good man, He has a golden finger. Author, Zhanghu Buletin Jian. Chapter 23. Lan Huan looked shocked. He was even as shocked as if he helped an old lady cross the road and then got hit by a porcelain. Didn't you really expect that you could knock a living grown man to pieces with just a casual kick? I didn't feel anything when I kicked him, so why did I kick him to pieces? He lowered his head, doubting his life, took a look at his famous sneakers, then raised his head to meet the eyes of the Xie family father and daughter, and was speechless. Daddy, I really doubt that bastard is a pawn. I've only hit someone once when I was this old, and I was able to cripple him. If I knew I had this ability, why would I be an internet celebrity? I'd just forget it. If I go boxing, I would already have brought home a lot of trophies. Even at this time, knowing that he might be sued for intentional injury, Lan Huan still joked. In fact, his eyes were a little panicked. He looked at his godfather for help, wanting to know how this happened. Housekeeper Xiaojiakai also looked at young Master Lan and felt really strange, because young Master Lan had only been able to get started for a short time, but he didn't expect to kill Su Yunhan directly. This was a mistake. Xie Jiayu heard what wasted meant, and immediately understood that when her father beat someone, brother Lan Huan also beat him, so that was the reason for the current situation. If it's useless, it's useless. What are you afraid of? Doesn't he deserve it? Xie Tingzhou spoke in the worried eyes of his godson, and then said. The company run by Su Yunhan has evaded taxes and has some interests with foreign countries. If he is sent to jail, he will be able to escape the jail. What you are doing now is also doing harm to the people. The things Su Yunhan did were unreasonable. He would do anything for money. In addition to following his father-in-law, Su Liangzi, to dig into Shen's jewelry group's production line, he also conducted some exchanges of interests with foreigners abroad. How could this matter be serious? Having a reputation as a traitor is, to say the least, an enemy. Besides, we are all here. He was injured by himself. What does it have to do with you? Did anyone see you beating him? Who can testify? Xie Tingzhu's words made Lan Huan feel relieved, and Huo Feng on the side also breathed a sigh of relief. After all, everyone knew that Su Yunhan was a scumbag, but as a citizen, it is an illegal act for you to attack others and cause them to be injured. If he files a lawsuit, Lan Huan will definitely pay the legal price. Brother Lan Huan is also doing it for me, right? Why doesn't Xie Jiayu understand that when a man fights, how can he go to that place of a man? It must be because Lan Huan knew about her affairs that she treated Su Yunhan like that. She never felt ashamed of this incident. Following Xie Jiayu's words, Xie Tingzhou, Lan Huan, and Huo Feng all looked over and saw the girl whose eye circles could still see reddish traces, saying, Su Yunhan deserves it, brother Lan Huan, don't worry, I won't let you be caught by the police. If Su Yunhan calls the police, I can tell the police that he drugged me 2 years ago, took a lot of photos, and imprisoned me after killing me for 2 years. Even if you imprison others, you will go to jail. Brother Lan Huan and my father beat me to save me, and it was self-defense. After speaking out his pain in an understatement, even the housekeeper Xiaojiakai, who is also a girl, couldn't help but look at Xie Jiayu, and Xie Tingzhu's face was even more distressed. However, Xie Jiayu was very indifferent. Dad and brother Lan Huan both know this, right? Don't worry, I won't be sad because of this, because the dirty person is not me, but Su Yunhan, and he is also the one who should be looked down upon. Xie Jiayu has never been the kind of person who would live and die for the so-called innocents, and she would never give up herself for the eyes of others. Just like at this moment, she clearly knows that in this whole matter, the bad guy is Su Yunhan, the person who should be cursed and despised by everyone is also Su Yunhan. Yes, the dirty and shameless person is Su Yunhan. How you? Dad arranged Su Yunhan here just to wait for you to arrange his whereabouts after you see him. Whether you let him stay here or send him to prison, Dad listened to you. Each and every one of the things Su Yunhan sat down could have sent him to prison. The reason why Xie Tingzhou did not do it was to give this choice to his daughter Xie Jiayu. As a victim, Xie Jiayu had the right to deal with Su Yunhan. Then let me go see him. Xie Jiayu glanced at Xie Tingzhou, her ember eyes were very calm. After saying this, Xie Tingzhou took Xie Jiayu into the golden birdcage. Lan Huan also followed him in. As the person involved, Lan Huan really couldn't believe that he had destroyed someone with just one kick. How could he even think about it? Is Su Yunhan so fragile? Su Yunhan, who was surrounded by doctors, was covered in cold sweat in pain. His face was pale at this time, and his hair had become wet from sweating and stuck to his forehead. His eyes, nose, and even face were all blue and purple. Xie Tingzhou, the traces left behind after the beating were very obvious. One of his eyes became bigger and the other smaller. He looked extremely embarrassed. How could he still look as high-spirited as before? It had only been 10 hours since morning, but Su Yunhan seemed to have become a different person. The doctors put clothes on Su Yunhan at this time, and then exited the cage tacitly. Su Yunhan lay on the ground, and then in such intense pain, he saw the person he least wanted to see, Xie Jiayu. At this moment, he was lying on the ground, and Xie Jiayu stood there, looking down calmly, but Su Yunhan suddenly felt as if he had returned to the first time they met. At that time, his father Su Liangzi had not come back to see him and his mother. His mother had never been involved in production and always had problems at work. Su Yunhan had to borrow money to go to school at that time. The day he met Xie Jiayu, it was Su Yunhan's mother's song on Wen's birthday. Su Yunhan, who had just grown up at the time, saw a necklace in the store. He didn't know why, so he took action and stole the necklace. Later, he was caught by the waiter and pinned to the ground, and then he met Xie Jiayu, who was in the store to buy something. Xie Jiayu was still young at the time, but the teenage girl has already achieved the beauty she is today. The clues of beauty can be seen even in childhood. Xie Jiayu was a small person at that time. Although he didn't smile, he spent money to help Su Yunhan get rid of the matter of calling the police. The 2,000 yuan was a huge sum of money for Su Yunhan at that time. Later, Su Yunhan regarded Xie Jiayu as the moon in his dream. After he recognized his relatives, Su Yunhan, who had everything, naturally wanted to try to own the moon. He wanted to have the best everything in the world. When he was young, by Yueguang Xie Jiayu also there is the Shen Jewelry Group, and he greedily wants to get it all. It's just that Su Yunhan worked hard to get Xie Jiayu by his side, but he could never get a look from this man. At this moment, he was lying on the ground in a state of embarrassment, with a dull pain somewhere, but Xie Jiayu was still as bright and flawless as when they first met her, like the moon hanging high in the sky. Bright moon. Su Yunhan gritted his teeth and called Xie Jiayu's name. Xie Jiayu then lowered her head and looked at him. There was no sympathy or love in her eyes, only a coldness that was so calm that she could regard Su Yunhan as a stranger. Su Yunhan, when my mother was ill 2.5 years ago, you showed up to help our family. In fact, I have always been grateful to you. Xie Jiayu spoke, this was her sincere gratitude. At that time, the house at home could not be sold, and my mother was in a hurry for the surgery. It was you who arranged for my mother to go abroad for the surgery, which cost nearly 6 million. I am really grateful to you. Do you remember? I wrote you a letter at that time. The IOU said that if I made money from work later, I would pay you back the 5 million yuan. You accepted it, but you told me that I didn't have to pay it back, saying that it was a favor from me when I saved you. Xie Jiayu slowly told the story of the past, not only to Su Yunhan in front of her, but also to her father Xie Tingzhou, who had returned 19 years later. I spent 2,000 yuan to save you back then, but the kindness you gave me cost millions. I was thinking at that time, I have never been such a lucky person, and the gifts others gave me were all in need of me. In exchange for giving back, when my mother recovered and we returned to China, after my 18th birthday, I was actually not surprised that you drugged my water. Xie Jiayu does not look like a 20-year-old girl at this time, as if she has seen through all the hardships of the world. A boy in my class gave me thousands of yuan in gifts and wanted me to be his girlfriend. You helped my family and gave me more than 5 million yuan. It's not difficult to understand that you want some feedback. She saw it clearly than anyone else. When she accepted Su Yunhan's help, she knew the price she might have to pay, but the price was insignificant compared to her mother's life, so Xie Jiayu had no regrets. But that's what you were wrong about. You shouldn't have threatened me with my mother and brother. I can stay quietly in your villa and be your canary, or I can die with you for my mother and my brother. Xie Jiayu said this and paused. I had planned it before. When my brother makes money and takes my mother away, I can be free. But now my father is back, he wants to take me home, and I don't have to stay in your cage. Su Yunhan's face became even paler, and even looked extremely hideous and ugly at this time. He gritted his teeth in pain, and felt his head buzzing as he listened to Xie Jiayu's words. But he still wanted to speak. He endured the pain and gritted his teeth. Jiayu, I admit that my previous treatment of you was a bit extreme, but I love you, I really love you. If it wasn't because I loved you, how could I have wanted to keep you by my side at all costs? You were placed in the villa because I just wanted you to treat me as the most important person in your life. I love you so much, but you didn't even look at me and even scratched yourself on purpose. How distressed am I? No matter what I do to you, it's all because I love you. Do you know that I love you so much? He said such crazy words of love ferociously, but Xie Jiayu showed some doubts on her face. Then she looked at Su Yunhan for a long time before looking at her father Xie Tingzhou. Dad, look at this man, it's so strange. He says he loves me, but he wants to destroy my life, imprison my body, and threaten me with those photos. He keeps hurting me, but he turns around and says he loves me. Saying you feel sorry for me. Loving someone, is this what it means? Good man, he has a golden finger. Author, Zhanghu Buletin Jian. Chapter 24. Of course not. Xie Tingzhou replied, looking at Su Yunhan with a sneer, and then he realized that his daughter didn't know as much as he did as a father. When your mother's heart disease relapsed, she needed to go abroad for treatment, but you had already decided to sell the house. 2.5 years ago, a 200 square meter large flat in Shangjing City was worth enough for 23 million. You lowered the price to 20 million, but no one bought it? It was at that time that Su Yunhan appeared, right? He said he came to repay you. You gave him 2,000 yuan when he stole something, so he came to repay you and sent your mother abroad for treatment. It cost less than 6 million in a few months, but Jiayu, I have investigated Su Yunhan. When your house was put up for sale, many people wanted to buy it. After all, it was 3 million cheaper than the market price, but Su Yunhan stopped him. Do you understand? He stopped your mother from selling the house to save her life, and deliberately appeared in front of you as a rescuer. He was replaying the scene when you first met, but this time he became the savior, and you were the poor person who needed to be saved by him. Tell me, couldn't you take your mother out for treatment after selling the 20 million house? Obviously, all of this can be solved. Houses in Shangjing City are very popular. In addition, Huang Xinyu's house is not only a large flat, but also has a good geographical location. It is within the third ring road and the price is 3 million cheaper. Who doesn't want to take advantage of this? With 20 million in hand, even without Su Yunhan's help, the Xie family siblings can send Huang Xinyu abroad for treatment. It's nothing more than losing the house and starting all over again. Xie Tingzhou did not hesitate to expose Su Yunhan's hypocritical mask in front of Xie Jiayu. Xie Jiayu was completely stunned. She naturally would not doubt her father. After discussing with her brother about selling the house price was reduced by 3 million and it was put up for sale overnight, but no one asked a question for several days. At that time, Xie Jiayu saw that her mother was seriously ill and was too panicked to find the problem. "You stopped me from selling the house? How could you do this?" At this moment, Xie Jiayu was a little collapsed. She almost couldn't control herself and rushed up directly, slapping Su Yunhan in the face without hesitation. She rarely lost control like this, and it almost happened today. "Do you know how serious my mother's illness was at that time? Do you know how scared my brother and I were at that time? Every day we were waiting for the house to be sold and go abroad to treat my mother. Su Yunhan, how can a person like you be worthy of saying that you love someone? You love me like this and want to kill my mother. You are simply a beast." That is her only mother. Her only two relatives in this world. She slapped Su Yunhan in the face again. Su Yunhan lay on the ground unable to move, but Xie Jiayu's eyes were red. When her mother's old illness relapsed, Xie Jiayu and Xie Xing were so scared that they almost stayed up all night to watch over Huang Xinyu, fearing that something would happen in the blink of an eye. Xie Jiayu was the one who handled the house. When the siblings were in the ward, they almost didn't close their eyes for a week. After that, even when Su Yunhan appeared, the siblings lost several pounds because they were afraid that something would happen to Huang Xinyu. Su Yunhan did not resist. His face was already a mess from Xie Ting's beating, with bruises and purples all over it. At this time, he was bleed from his nose by the slap from Xie Jiayu. Even so, Su Yunhan did not resist. He let Xie Jiayu vent her anger by hitting him more than a dozen times. His face was even swollen, and the blood from his nose flowed to his lips. His face was burning with pain, and a certain part of his body that belonged to a man also hurt, but Su Yunhan still looked at Xie Jiayu in front of him and finally looked like a human being, and laughed. "I just want to appear by your side when you are most helpless, just like the first time we met. Xie Jiayu, you shouldn't have saved me. At that time, I was pressed to the ground like now, and you kindly appeared. If you didn't help me, I wouldn't be so greedy to like you and fall in love with you. In your eyes, your mother Huang Xinyu is very important, and your brother Xie Xing is very important. Only I am like a stranger, and you will never let me keep it in your heart. I can only do this, and I can only appear when you need me, so that you can leave a small place for me in your heart." Even at this time, Su Yunhan still looked at Xie Jiayu with love in his eyes, but this love was crazy and terrifying, full of obsession. Although Lan Huan was a virgin, he also knew that the so-called love was not so deformed and so terrifying. He couldn't help but rushed up and pouted at Su Yunhan. "Bah! You little fatherless bastard! This is how you repay someone for helping you? Have you lost your conscience? And you keep saying you love my sister? Don't you even look at yourself to see if you deserve it? Is this how you like someone?" He was so angry that veins popped out on his neck, and finally couldn't help it, kicking Su Yunhan's leg uncomfortably. "If I like someone, I will treat her well as much as I can. Not only will I treat her well, I will also treat her father, mother, grandparents, brothers, and sisters well. Do you know what it means to love someone and love everything about him? You say you love my sister, but what you do is not what a human being would do." Lan Huan had already lost his mind, and was cursing at the moment. "Working with you is just deliberately adding insult to injury. You wait until people are isolated and helpless before you become the savior. The suspension bridge effect is very good, isn't it? Why don't you be a psychiatrist when you don't have a humming company? You also drugged and co-authored You Just Drug Anyone You Like, right? So, Uncle Policeman, you think you're a hero who saves a beauty, druggies you, and imprisons you. Do you think you're the overbearing president in the novel, and you're lawless? I'm telling you. You're a useless person now. I'm not afraid of you. The worst I can do is squat in there for a few years, and I'll still be a good man when I come out. Lan Huan, who had an impatient personality, now made Su Yunhan furious. Especially after seeing Xie Jiayu so calmly telling what happened to her, Lan Huan felt even more distressed. After all, a girl had to suffer so much. How much pain did it take for this little girl to speak so calmly about the hurt she had suffered? Brother Lan Huan Xie Jiayu was originally furious, but when she saw that brother Lan Huan was also so angry, she went over and grabbed the angry Lan Huan. This attitude turned out to be more intimate than that of Su Yunhan, who had been with him day and night for more than 2 years. Brother Lan Huan, don't be angry. He doesn't deserve your anger. Xie Jiayu stretched out her hand and hugged Lan Huan's arm. As soon as she said such soft words, Lan Huan suddenly returned to his senses. It was the first time that a girl held his arm like this. He felt a little embarrassed. He only felt that there was a beautiful girl. Liang's sister is so nice. Well, sister, don't worry. I'm not angry. I'm not as knowledgeable as this beast. The pain in his body at this time was not as painful as the scene in front of him, which made Su Yunhan more painful. He almost stared at the scene in front of him with wide eyes. The girl who was like the bright moon in his heart, Xie Jiayu, who was always extremely cold to him, was tender at this moment. Holding the arm of a strange man, making such an intimate gesture. This is probably about looking at mountains for mountains and water for water. Xie Jiayu holding Lan Huan's arm is the same as holding her father Xie Tingzhou, but in Su Yunhan's eyes, it was betraying herself. Thank you Jiayu. Who is this man? In the past 2 years, I have given you my heart and soul, provided you with food and clothing, and almost dug out my heart to show you. I like you so much, but you don't know it. You didn't ask, you were cold and indifferent to me, and now you are intimate with this strange man in front of me. Do you still have the heart? Perhaps this is a sign of being obsessed with love, although no one would want such love even if it were thrown on the ground. Xie Jiayu finished coaxing Lan Huan, and then looked at Su Yunhan. None of this has anything to do with you, Su Yunhan. I can tell you responsibly that I have never liked you, let alone loved you. When you drugged me, I didn't go to the police because I was grateful to you for my mother. But now this life-saving grace is also fake. If you drug me and imprison me for 2 years, I will call the police. I will ask my father to take me to the police station to call the police and send you to prison. Xie Jiayu has never been afraid of the eyes of others. As a person who integrates her soul into the paintings, she has never been afraid of the eyes of outsiders. For her, only her own thoughts are the most important. At this moment, Xie Jiayu looked at Xie Tingzhou and said, Dad, I have made a decision. He is wasting Dad's money by staying here. I am going to sue him and send him to prison to make him pay for his actions. The drugging and imprisonment alone were enough to put Su Yunhan in jail for about 10 years. Coupled with Su Yunhan's foreign business, Xie Tingzhou had a way to make Su Yunhan spend the rest of his life in prison. Okay, then Dad will listen to you and send the person to prison, which will give him an advantage. Xie Tingzhou nodded and finally gave Su Yunhan a look. And Lan Huan also feels that a great revenge must be avenged. This kind of beast who forces girls should be sent to prison to eat prison food. Otherwise, when you get old, you will be an old beast, and you may cause harm to other people. First look at the people, make sure they are all healed and no injuries are visible on their bodies, then call the police. Xie Tingzhou looked at the life housekeeper Xia Jiakai on the side and explained. Yes, sir. Now that the initiative is in Xie Jiayu's hands, even if Su Yunhan can leave here now, he no longer dares. Su Yunhan finally believed that the woman he loved most in the world was going to send him to prison. At this moment, he felt not only the burning pain in his body, but also the pain in his heart, which was almost convulsing. His eyes were still following Xiajiayu greedily, and he spoke in embarrassment when Xiajiayu was about to leave the birdcage. Xiajiayu, I know that everything I am doing now is caused by myself, but I really love you. Now I am a knife and a turtle, and I am a fish and meat. If I lose, I have nothing to say. I just want to ask you. Before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by Xiajiayu. I've never been in love, Su Yunhan, to be honest, you've always made me sick. After saying this, she turned around and left the golden birdcage without hesitation. Xie Tingzhou, Lan Huan, and others also walked out. In the end, only Su Yunhan was left in the gorgeous golden birdcage. The door opened at this time. Yes, he can leave at any time. At this moment, Su Yunhan, who was lying there, seemed to have lost everything he wanted to pursue, and finally understood the pain and suffering of being trapped in a desperate situation and being helpless. Only this time, he personally sent himself to prison. Good man, he has a golden finger. Author, Zhanghu Buletin Jian. Chapter 25. When leaving St. Paul Garden again, he couldn't go back to Jie Longting. Lan Huan, who was driving in the car, kept winking at his friend, and Huo Feng immediately understood what Lan Huan meant. Mr. Xie, I have another villa in Shangjing City. How about taking Miss Xie to my place tonight to rest? After all, Mr. Xie didn't rest for nearly a day and a night, and everyone ran with him. Now Miss Xie was finally rescued. Mr. Xie didn't know whether to buy a villa in Shangjing City, so Huo Feng made such a suggestion. Okay, you can fix it up first, and then buy a few villas that my daughter likes tomorrow. Xiao Huo, I've troubled you for the past 2 days, just like Lan Huan, go back and have a good rest. Xie Tingzhou also knew that these people had to work hard to follow him, and Lan Huan was always alert. Godfather, I'm glad to follow you. I know where the madman's villa is. You and your sister take a rest. We'll be there soon. Lan Huan drove the Hummer very steadily. Xie Jiayu, who was sitting in the back, was really close to Xie Tingzhou. She also knew that it was so late now. If she went back to her own home, what if she scared her mother? The car soon arrived at the location of Huo Feng's villa, Hongyu Lake Villa. The villa here is also very valuable. Among them, because it is close to the largest artificial lake, Hongyu Lake, it is named for its picturesque scenery in all seasons. However, the group did not have time to appreciate it at this time. After entering Huo Feng's house, Lan Huan was also shocked by the villa in front of him, because it was also his first time to visit his brother's private villa. From the entrance, the huge crystal chandelier in the center of the villa almost hung down from the upstairs. Various square crystals formed such a crystal chandelier more than 10 meters high. When you go up the stairs, you can see the sparkling appearance of the dazzling crystal. Needless to say, the other surrounding furnishings are noble and elegant. Not to mention Lan Huan, even Xie Jiayu was surprised to see such a crystal lamp, and was surprised by the internal structure of this villa. In the end, Xie Jiayu was arranged by the maid in the villa first, in the guest room on the 3rd floor. Xie Tingzhou and Lan Huan were the same. After a busy day and night, they finally had time to rest. This night should have been sleepless. Xie Jiayu lay in this strange room. The soft bed made her head clear. She wanted to use her mobile phone to talk to her brother, but in the end she found that she was in a hurry to come out with her father and seemed to have not brought her mobile phone. And mother, if she knew that her father was really back, would she be happy? She thought that her mother's waiting for so many years finally paid off, and she was relieved. She fell asleep in a short while. The same was true for others. They kept busy around Mr. Xie, and naturally they didn't even close their eyes. It was less than 24 hours since Mr. Xie flew over from Daxi City last night, and everyone was exhausted. This sleep was really reassuring. Xie Jiayu rarely overslept. Usually, her biological clock would be on time at 6 o'clock in the morning. But today, when Xie Jiayu woke up on the soft big bed, it was already 10:50 in the morning. In 10 minutes, it would be 11 o'clock. Miss Xie, this is the clothes that the gentleman asked me to prepare for you. Which one do you like? Several maids came in to serve after hearing that Xie Jiayu had gotten up. They brought several sets of Chanel dresses in their hands, and even matching underwear had been prepared early. How could the female guests in the guest room get up early in the morning without clothes to change? This black one. Xie Jiayu randomly picked a black strapless long skirt. The pure black silk long skirt was quickly put on with the help of the maid. The maid tied her long black hair behind her head, revealing her slender and white neck. Then a white gauze was casually draped over her shoulders. Only the Chanel logo camellia on the chest was the only embellishment on the black long skirt. Miss Xie, you are really very elegant. You are the most artistic girl I have ever seen. The maid was eloquent and praised Xie Jiayu repeatedly, which made her face blush. When she went downstairs, the men had already gotten up early. After all, Huo Feng was working for someone, Lan Huan was a clinger, and Xie Tingzhou had his own biological clock and had to get up before 7 o'clock in the morning. The men sat in the lobby on the second floor to rest and took a look at the information about his wife Huang Xinyu over the years. Huang Xinyu was really more powerful than Xie Tingzhou had imagined. No wonder the original owner was jealous and even lost his mind after getting the unlimited black card and directly abandoned the other party. Huang Xinyu is still doing product research in the original cosmetics company. The reason why she was able to increase her salary so quickly after graduation was because the products she developed became a big hit, which led to a greater distance between her and Xie Tunan. So never underestimate a man's useless self-esteem. He can enjoy the way you rely on him when you have nothing, but he can't tolerate your attitude of being richer and more capable than him. This is probably the bad nature of human beings, and no one can get rid of it. And his wife's strange behavior in the information, Xie Tingzhou instantly realized everything from the above information. After reading the information, Xie Tingzhou already knew how he should go back to his lover. At this moment, beside the swaying crystal lamp, Xie Jiayu walked down with the hem of her skirt. Her appearance immediately attracted the attention of the men present. The long black skirt perfectly outlined Xie Jiayu's tall figure, and the exposed fragrance the shoulders were looming because of the white gauze, and Xie Jiayu, who had all her hair tied behind her head, was even more mysterious and charming. "Dad, I seem to have gotten up a little late." Xie Jiayu came over, a little embarrassed, her black satin dress swaying like waves on the smooth ground, which was very touching. "It's not too late, are you hungry? We are all waiting for you. Let's go to dinner together. After dinner, I will take you to see a house. Dad plans to buy you a villa. I happen to hear Huo Feng say that there is a villa here at Hongyu Lake. Take action, but it still depends on your preference." Xie Tingzhou waved to his daughter and smiled very kindly. After confirming that his daughter had no feelings for that idiot Su Yunhan, Xie Tingzhou felt relieved, for fear that his daughter, the victim, would have some sympathy for the perpetrator. Yes, Xie Jiayu nodded, and everyone moved to the restaurant. It has to be said that Huo Feng's villa here is nice, and the food prepared by the chef is also exquisite and tastes very good. However, such a man who has a villa in Shangjing City actually works as a private detective in private. Surprising. Lan Huan was really speechless about this. He was playing well with the second-generation people in Xiangjiang, but he really didn't know what kind of property they had. Last night, Huo Feng was willing to lend the villa to his godfather and sister. Even Lan Huan was surprised because his brother had never been here before. After eating, Xie Tingzhou took Xie Jiayu to see a villa quite close to Huo Feng. It happened that the owner of the villa was going abroad and wanted to leave the villa. The Hongyu Lake in summer is as beautiful as a painting. When walking to another villa, The scenery along the way is so picturesque that Siejiayu is mesmerized by the scenery, especially the one next to the Hongyu Lake. The main area is a dense maple forest, which is now green in summer. If it comes in autumn, the red fallen leaves can float on the lake, which is naturally breathtakingly beautiful. When we arrived at the villa we wanted to sell, it really had a good view and good decoration. It had a huge observation deck and floor-to-ceiling windows on the top floor, as well as an outdoor swimming pool and an open-air cinema. The overall area was about 2,000 yuan. It was indeed a good house. From the time I bought this villa, it took me 8 years to decorate it. I hired the top designers in France to design it. It was originally for my mother to live in, but my sister wanted to take my mother to a manor in France. I can't live in it now. Everything inside is 100% new, and no one has ever lived in it. If I buy this, I can move in directly. Since I am Mr. Huo's friend, I don't want to pay an inflated price. It's a fixed price. 300 million, no more. The young man selling the villa was in the same grade as Lan Huan, and he was very generous now. After all, just decorating it cost a lot of money, and these 300 million yuan were really cheap. Okay, swipe your card. When Xietingzhou saw Xiejiayu's eyes sparkling after he came in, he really liked it, so he took out the black card. The butler Huang Yu on the side took it, and the young man selling the villa was also shocked. 300 million can be swiped directly by credit card. No sharing. It's true that the wealthy people from Xiangjiang are rich these days. This person regarded Xietingzhou as a rich man in Xiangjiang. After all, he came with Huo Feng. Huo Feng's family was very well established and wealthy. Ding dong. Credit card swiped successfully. The house seller was even more enthusiastic and even left his personal contact information. Lan Huan was calm about this. Seeing that his godfather casually bought hundreds of millions of cars, why not just spend 300 million to buy a villa now? Sprinkle some water. Xiejiayu had imagined that her father was rich, but she didn't expect that her father was so rich. He bought a 300 million villa on the spot, and she was a little surprised for a moment. No wonder Su Yunhan was controlled in just one meeting. His father was more powerful than he imagined. After buying the house, Xietingzhou took Xiejiayu out again, but this time the person he met surprised Xiejiayu. Principal Zhang, this is my daughter Xiejiayu. She was admitted to your school 2 years ago. However, due to poor health, she never reported it. I accidentally lost the admission notice at that time. Now she is finally in good health. Well, I want to send her to school, but I don't know how the school will arrange her enrollment. I'm thinking of donating 2 buildings to the school. What do you think? The person who was invited out was the principal of Shangjing Academy of Fine Arts. Principal Zhang was originally confused, but he was introduced by an acquaintance and came here because he had a big boss to meet. As soon as they met, he gave away 2 buildings for free. Suddenly, the confusion on Principal Zhang's face disappeared, and it was filled with a sincere smile. Of course there is no problem. Since your daughter has been admitted to our school will naturally keep the file. Although she did not come to register 2 years ago, it is not too late to report now. I will ask someone to pull out the file later and wait for the summer vacation. After that, you will be able to come to our school and report directly to classes. It's true that Principal Zhang doesn't like to send people to his school, but since they can pass the exam, it's no problem to prove their ability. Wasn't it because he was weak and didn't come to report before? Wouldn't it be enough to reschedule the report? It's all little things, little things. In the end, Xietingzhou had a good talk with Principal Zhang and decided to donate 2 buildings to the Shangjing Academy of Fine Arts at a price of 300 million. Xiejiayu also knew for the first time that having a father felt like this. Not only was his life protected, even dreams and pursuits can be protected. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Good man, he has a golden finger. Author, Jonghu Buletin. Chapter 26. So far, the 5 billion mission funds given by the system have been spent on 1.8 billion, but this is less than half of the mission funds. Xie Zhou is very calm. After saying goodbye to Principal Zhang, Xie Jiayu held her phone, which contained Principal Zhang's personal contact information and WeChat. Listening to this person who could only be seen in the Baidu Encyclopedia introduction enthusiastically call herself Jiayu, Xie Jiayu really had mixed emotions. She loves oil painting, otherwise she would not have been studying oil painting since she was a child. She even got admitted to the Shangjing Academy of Fine Arts, but she didn't have the chance to go there. Xie Jiayu even made plans to never go to Shangjing Academy of Fine Arts. Nowadays, things have turned around, and there is a sense of unreality in a dream. Aren't you happy to go back to school? Xie Zhou looked at his daughter in a daze and reached out to pat her daughter on the shoulder. Happy, Xie Jiayu replied. She turned her head to look at the young man in front of her, who was actually her father, who was closely related to her flesh and blood. Dad, you spent 300 million to buy a villa today, and you also spent 300 million to donate to the school to build 2 buildings, which makes me feel a little incredible. In fact, there is no need to spend so much money on me. Although Xie Jiayu did not come from a wealthy background, Huang Xinyu's living conditions for her daughter and son were not low when she was young, but she had never handled such a large project worth hundreds of millions. It's okay. Dad loves to spend money on you. When he was in Daxi City, he bought a red Ferrari. I think it suits you very well. I'll let your brother and Xiao Huo take you out for fun later, isn't it? Are there any sports car clubs for young people? Go out more and have fun. Xie Zhou couldn't help but rub his well-behaved daughter's hair. Seeing that his daughter wanted to save money for himself, Xie Zhou laughed. Lan Huan in front suddenly became excited when he heard about the supercar club. Daddy, there is a sports car club, but I couldn't get in before. Everyone wanted a supercar. My car before was only worth $1 million, but with the Rolls-Royce you gave me, Godfather, I will barely able to get there. Lan Huan is barely considered a second-generation rich man in Daxi City, with a family worth hundreds of millions. In Xiangjiang City, the people are enthusiastic and he can get along, but he is slightly lacking in financial resources. But if he wants to play in a supercar club in Shangjing City, I'm afraid there's no chance. Of course, what he said meant that he didn't have the ability to take his sister to the supercar club. Huo Feng on the side spoke. I knew a few friends from the supercar club before I came to Beijing, but they were all racing cars. Does Ms. Ye like racing? Supercars are developed just for racing on the track. They have a low chassis and high horsepower. Many young people in China who have bought supercars have never been on the road. They have been modified to play on the track. There is a supercar club in Shanghai City that gathers the richest second-generation people in the circle. When they have nothing to do, they get together to race cars and play in a specially built supercar track on the outskirts of the supercar club. I have a driver's license, but I have never driven a sports car. Is a racing car the same as a sports car? Naturally, Xie Jiayu's family had never driven a sports car. The most expensive Hummer she had ever ridden was a Hummer from Xie Zhou. Only then did she realize that this Hummer was worth tens of millions. It's almost the same, just one is faster and the other is slower, but the supercar used for racing is more gorgeous, faster, and can't be used on the road. Huo Feng seemed to be very enthusiastic, so Lan Huan couldn't help but secretly give his friend a friendly look. Xie Zhou also heard what Huo Feng meant. Seeing that his daughter seemed interested, he said directly. It's only 4 o'clock now. It's not too late. I asked the butler to contact the Ford store here in Shangjing City to see if there are any top-notch supercars. If so, I can buy them for you. By the way, let the butler arrange to send your Ferrari to you. Come here, don't go home tonight, go out and have some fun with Huo Feng. The most suitable thing for Xie Jiayu now is not to stop, she wants to play, and she wants to play blindly. Only in this way can all the previous hurts be forgotten. Then listen to Dad. Xie Jiayu didn't know what to do when she returned home, so she naturally followed her father's arrangements. The life manager immediately started making arrangements after receiving the call. Someone was responsible for transporting Xie Jiayu's red Ferrari and took Xie Jiayu's driver's license by the way. Others had already contacted the supercar seller in Shangjing City. Ordinary people who want to buy a car naturally go to Ford stores, where they can buy all kinds of models. But if they want to buy a top-level supercar, they have to find a professional. Supercar sellers have appeared, which is similar to an intermediary. Identity. Young masters and young masters who play in Shangjing City, if they get tired of playing with the supercars in their hands, they will sell them here and exchange them for other ones to play with. There are also those who specialize in buying top-level supercars from abroad at high prices and making a fortune. Huang Yu's call came 10 minutes later. Sir, I have already contacted a supercar seller. He happens to have several world-class supercars. I believe that sir will like them when he sees them. Although she had only been this gentleman's housekeeper for a short time, Huang Yu deeply felt that for Mr. Xie will like it. Price is not an issue, as long as my daughter likes the car. Xie Tingzhou was very happy, which was as expected by Huang Yu. Yes, sir, but these top-notch sports cars are not in the Ford store. They are in the Super Sports Car Club in the eastern suburbs of Shangjing City. Let's go over and make arrangements first. Do you think that's okay? This time Xie Tingzhou went out with another housekeeper. Huang Yu and Xia Jiakai were responsible for helping Xie Tingzhou handle the trivial matters at home, such as the recruitment and management of new villa staff. Well, let's arrange it. Xie Tingzhou gave the housekeeper a 10 million card, and it was very convenient for the housekeeper to arrange all the daily chores freely. So the matter was decided happily. After waiting for an hour, Xie Tingzhou and others arrived at the supercar club to the east. Sure enough, there were all top luxury cars outside. Xie Tingzhou's Maybach was naturally not timid at all when he arrived at the door. He took his daughter, Lan Huan, and Huo Feng out of the car. The butler Huang Yu was already waiting there, with another manager in a black suit beside him. Sir, I have told the manager about your request. The lady's Ferrari has also been placed on the infield track. This is the membership card of the Super Sports Car Club. He held the membership card in both hands and handed it over. The black card in the white gloves was very similar to Xie Tingzhou's unlimited black card. The card application requirements of the Supercar Club are both high and low. If it is low, it only requires you to have a supercar worth more than 10 million. If it is higher, your assets will need to be investigated. Only if your personal assets are in the hundreds of millions can you barely reach the threshold of the Super Sports Car Club. Xie Tingzhou handled everything for the housekeeper Huang Yu, and naturally he handled it properly. No, just keep the card. Where's the car? He waved his hand and didn't care about the membership card here. The manager on the side had already looked at all the people coming. Not to mention the clothes of these people, the 30 million Maybach behind him was enough to prove that Xie Tingzhou had this ability to enter the supercar club. Hello, Mr. Xie, I am the manager of the supercar club. My surname is Wang. You can call me Xia Wang. I will take you to see the car. I heard from butler Huang that Miss Xie wants to choose a car today. There happens to be a car here that is very suitable for Miss Xie. Although manager Wang talks a lot, his voice is pleasant to the ear, and the numbness is not objectionable. In addition, he is also a good-looking person, so Xie Zhou followed Xie Jiayu. The left side of their supercar club is for people to buy cars, and the right side is for members to play without disturbing each other, which is very enjoyable. After all, they are the top sports car club in Shangjing City. Every month they bring back a car from overseas. The price is naturally very expensive for the consumption of the supercar club members. Once you get to the third floor of the elevator, you can see the car. It was Lan Huan's first time coming to a place like this. In fact, he was extremely nervous, but on the surface he seemed calm. Xie Jiayu held her father Xie Tingzhu's arm. She was wearing a black dress and looked extremely cold. She didn't look like it was her first time in such a place. After entering the third floor, the supercar that could be seen from a distance immediately attracted everyone's attention. It was a silver supercar. At this time, the door was open and spread out like a pair of wings, revealing what was inside. The interior has smooth overall lines. The closer you get, the more thrilling you can see the beauty of this supercar. Everyone was attracted and couldn't help but walked over. Manager Wang also introduced with a bit of obsession. This supercar is the Koenigsegg CCR. It is a supercar from Sweden. It was shipped back from abroad just this month. Not only is it a global limited edition, it has also been transformed in silver, making it even more dazzling. It accelerates from 0 to 100 km in 3.2 seconds and has a top speed of 395 km/h. It is very suitable for running on the track and is considered our car king this month. Many people always say that no man can resist the temptation of a supercar. In fact, this sentence is wrong, and women cannot resist such temptation. Xie Jiayu stared blankly at the silver supercar in front of her, almost outlining the beauty of the lines with her eyes. It must be said that such a top-notch sports car is not only about the color and appearance, but also the smoothness of the lines of the entire car body. They are all so comfortable to look at, allowing Xie Jiayu, who likes to draw, to feel this intuitive beauty. Woko. So handsome. This is the shocked Lan Huan, who has been completely wiped out by the car in front of him, leaving only a Woko to roam the world. Xie Tingzhu's favorite baby was a fighter jet, so he felt that such a sports car was ordinary. He turned around and saw that his daughter and Lan Huan both liked it, so he took out the black card. Swipe your card, I want this car. The price wasn't even mentioned. Just swipe your card. As expected of a big, wealthy customer. When Manager Wang looked at the black card, he immediately understood that Mr. Xie in front of him was not an ordinary rich man, so he immediately laughed, but did not take the black card. Mr. Xie, the price of this Koenigsegg CCR is 60 million. Are you sure you want to swipe your card? This sentence directly shocked Xie Jiayu and Lan Huan, who were obsessed with the beauty of cars. They immediately felt that this car was good looking, but was it too expensive? 60 million. Well, my daughter likes it, just swipe the card. Xie Tingzhu didn't care about the price. He handed the card to the butler Huang Yu, who was on the side to handle the purchase. Then he looked at his daughter's cute look, stretched out his hand to rub his daughter's hair and said, "Whatever car you like today, Daddy will buy it for you." Good man, he has a golden finger. Author, Zhanghu Buletin. Chapter 27. This Mr. Xie really dotes on his daughter. And this Mr. Xie looks so young, I never thought he has such a big daughter. Manager Wang sighed in his heart, but didn't think much about it. After all, the two look very similar, and no one would doubt the relationship between them. So in less than 20 minutes, for the first time, Manager Wang didn't have to introduce a certain car model with great eloquence. Just after Mr. Xie took a few more glances, he directly decided to buy it, and chose a total of 5 supercars. In addition to the silver Koenigsegg.CCR that Xie Jiayu chose at the beginning, Xie Tingzhu personally chose a yellow supercar for Lan Huan. This yellow version of Hennessy Venom GT is as cool as the Bumblebee in the movie, which makes Lan Huan so excited. Not only that, Huo Feng, who came with him, was also given a 50 million Hennessy Viper GT, but it was black. Huo Feng understood that this was the hush money given by Mr. Xie, so he didn't refuse and accepted it. Thinking of Miss Xie's mother, Huo Feng actually understood why Mr. Xie suddenly brought Miss Xie to the supercar club today. Both Miss Xie and her mother were people who cared about each other. The things Ms. Huang did were just like Miss Xie hiding it from Ms. Huang, and Ms. Huang also hiding it from Miss Xie. Both of them concealed love, but the result may be the deepest hurt to each other. Huo Feng had read the information sent by Ri today, so he knew that the 50 million luxury car given by Xie Tingzhou was a hush money. Miss Xie, our racing track is very large, and there is a racing track dedicated to test driving. Today your father bought you so many luxury cars, why not try it at our racing track? If you are worried about safety issues, we also have racing suits. Manager Wang has arranged for someone to deal with the subsequent document issues, and now he is talking to Xie Jiayu in a flattering way. Xie Jiayu had never driven a supercar before, but now watching such a cold-blooded creation up close, she only felt that she understood why many people like supercars. Okay. She nodded, and then changed her clothes under the arrangement of Manager Wang. After all, wearing a long skirt is not suitable for driving. In the supercar club, there are racing suits specially prepared for all members, which can be used for test driving, which is safer. Xie Jiayu went to test drive, and the three men sat together. Lan Huan was a little embarrassed. He had taken a Rolls-Royce worth 5 million from his godfather before, and now he directly took a Bumblebee worth 50 million from his godfather. He was really excited and overwhelmed. He was sitting there and fidgeting. Huo Feng, who was also given a supercar, was very calm, waiting for Xie Tingzhou's next arrangement. Lan Huan, don't be nervous. You call me godfather, and it's nothing for me to give you a car. You just need to protect your sister well. Your godfather is willing to give you whatever your sister has. After Xie Tingzhou said this, Lan Huan was not so uncomfortable, and quickly promised. Godfather, don't worry. I will never allow anyone to bully my sister. If anyone wants to bully my sister, step over me first. He patted his chest as a guarantee, and Xie Tingzhou also looked at Huo Feng on the side. I will go to see my wife tomorrow. I don't plan to bring Jiayu with me this time. Huo Feng, you and Lan Huan should accompany Jiayu to have fun today, and let her continue to come here to play tomorrow. I don't want her to know in advance that I will meet her mother. This is the reason why Xie Tingzhou deliberately mentioned the supercar club, in order to send Xie Jiayu away and prevent Xie Jiayu from contacting his wife. Moreover, after bringing his daughter out yesterday, his daughter did not have a mobile phone and would not contact his wife for the time being. Mr. Xie, don't worry. Our detective club will remain silent about Ms. Wang's affairs, and all the information we have investigated has been handed over to Mr. Xie, and no one will know. Huo Feng gave the answer Xie Tingzhou wanted. He looked at Huo Feng with satisfaction, and then chose to remain silent after seeing Xie Jiayu come out. Xie Jiayu changed into a white and red striped racing suit. She looked very energetic and excited about driving a super sports car. Jiayu, let your brothers take you to play. Dad is tired. Dad will take a rest on top and just watch you play. Xie Tingzhou believed that Lan Huan and Huo Feng would take good care of Xie Jiayu. At this time, Xie Jiayu naturally agreed to this arrangement. Then Dad, you have a good rest here. Although Dad looked young on the surface, he was actually 45 years old. It was indeed time to rest and should not follow these young people to make trouble. So Xie Jiayu, Lan Huan, and Huo Feng went to the racetrack and started to learn to drive a sports car in the huge racetrack. The main reason was that Xie Jiayu was not very good at it, and Lan Huan did not know much about Bumblebee. After a while, Xie Zhou saw two cars starting up at the floor-to-ceiling window. Lan Huan was alone in the Bumblebee, and Xie Jiayu was in the driver's seat of the other car, and Huo Feng was in the co-pilot seat, probably to help Xie Jiayu drive. Xie Zhou stood there for a while before asking the housekeeper beside him, "When is the appointment with Ms. Shen?" Huang Yu immediately gave the answer. It was originally scheduled for a week later. "If you want to advance, I can notify Ms. Shen Yin." Xie Zhou retracted his gaze and turned around. "How is Ms. Shen's action going?" He was talking about the response of Shen's jewelry group. Ms. Shen has sent all the shareholders and managers involved with Su Liangzi to the police station for investigation. Su Liangzi was arrested and brought to the police station for interrogation as soon as he returned home. But Song Wen went home by herself. Do we need to continue to follow up? For the reaction of Shen's jewelry group, every move is within the sight of these life managers. They need to know the latest news at any time and then report the latest situation to Xie Zhou. Keep watching. Xie Zhou sighed, picked up the phone, and clicked on the screen. The screen of the phone endorsed by his son Xiezing had been replaced with a new screensaver by Xie Zhou. It was not Xiezing, but a woman who looked to be in her 30s. The woman in the screensaver had curved eyebrows and two deep dimples at the corners of her mouth when she smiled. The whole person was very sweet. Even if there were traces of time in the corners of her eyes, people still felt inexplicably at ease when they saw it. This photo was taken from Huang Xinyu's circle of friends. As long as you think, the internet is not a safe place. Have you applied for my previous mobile phone number back? He spoke again, asking about the mobile phone number that Xie Tunan had applied for back then. Although that mobile phone number was very ordinary, it was a couple number with Huang Xinyu, so after returning, Xie Zhou planned to use this number again. Sorry, sir, the number you mentioned has not been shut down for the past 19 years. Since you disappeared, your wife Huang Xinyu has been using your number. Huang Yu felt a little ashamed, thinking that she couldn't do what the gentleman wanted to arrange, but she also sighed at the feelings of Mrs. for Mr. Xie. A woman whose husband had been missing for 19 years actually kept her husband's phone number and went to the police station every month to inquire about her husband's whereabouts. Such a sincere woman, no wonder the gentleman missed her. Xie Zhou didn't say anything, just looked down at the screensaver of his mobile phone, and gently stroked the familiar face with his fingers. His feelings for Huang Xinyu naturally stayed in the best time. Even though Huang Xinyu's face had begun to age, it still couldn't stop Xie Zhou's feelings. When facing a young lover, you can say that you love your youthful appearance, but when you know that your lover is old, you also have to love her mature charm dressed by the years. After that, Xie Zhou stayed in the room alone for a long time. He was thinking about how to explain all this to Huang Xinyu, but he didn't know where to start. There were also the things his wife had done recently. If he came back later, the consequences would probably be unimaginable. Inside the racetrack, Xie Jiayu experienced the feeling of speeding for the first time. In such a world-class sports car, on such a wide track, the car was driven at a flying speed, and the heartbeat seemed to jump out of the throat. It was obviously such an exciting and crazy thing, but Xie Jiayu was expressionless from beginning to end. Only after the car stopped, her slight panting could make people feel her love for speed and passion. Dinner was almost eaten here. With the instructions of the Godfather, Lan Huan talked about the development history and speed of the world's top luxury cars, which made Xie Jiayu listen with relish, and immediately agreed to Lan Huan's brother to come to the supercar club tomorrow to play. Just play with your brothers. Don't think about anything these 2 days. Dad will take care of everything. Xie Jiayu opened her mouth and wanted to ask her father when he would go to see her mother, but she couldn't ask because her father seemed to have his own ideas. In the end, Xie Jiayu was attracted by Lan Huan's enthusiasm. When she went home to sleep at night, Her ears were filled with the buzzing sound of supercars. Early the next morning, Xie Jiayu didn't even have time to see her father before she was dragged by Lan Huan and Huo Feng to play with sports cars. In addition to sports cars, the two seemed to plan for Xie Jiayu to play with other things. Xie Tingzhou got into the car of Huang Yu, the life butler, which was the most low-key black BMW, which cost only more than 1 million. The car left Hongyu Lake and drove out to the outside of the 4th Ring Road. It was already 8 o'clock in the morning. "Sir, Ms. Huang has gone out. The destination of the car should be Song Wen's home." Xie Tingzhou was not surprised to hear this answer and nodded. Also heading towards Song Wen's house. This ordinary BMW merged into the morning traffic of Shangjing City, and on the road within the 3rd Ring Road, a $2 million white Mercedes was slowly moving on the road. The driver was a woman, who was dressed up carefully, with curly hair and light makeup, but still looked very healthy. At most, her face was pretty and had no offensive power, only her pair of peach blossom eyes were slightly raised at this time, as if with a smile. She was Huang Xinyu, Xie Jiayu's mother. At this moment, the light was red. Huang Xinyu turned her head to look at the cosmetics she had placed on the passenger seat, and a hint of cruelty flashed in her eyes. "Good man, he has a golden finger." Author, Zhanghu Buletin Jian. Chapter 28. The green light came on, and white vehicles once again poured into the busy streets. The cosmetics placed on the passenger seat were stable, and the precious gifts were placed in the trunk. Huang Xinyu was driving the car, and the music of her son Xiezing's MC boy band was playing in the car. Such lively and explosive music seemed to be incompatible with this warm car, and also with a gentle woman like Huang Xinyu. She drove quietly like this, and her destination was very simple. It was a commercial community within the 2nd Ring of Shangjing City. There were many large flats there, with good ceiling, and the name was also nice, called Mantingfang Commercial Community. It was a more prosperous area of the 2nd Ring of Shangjing City, surrounded by commercial areas, and the price was naturally needless to say. Huang Xinyu bought a house for more than 20 million yuan before, with a down payment of 15 million yuan and a loan of more than 8 million yuan. Later, it cost about 4 million yuan to renovate and buy home furnishings that her son and daughter liked. However, compared with Mantingfang, it is not comparable. The smallest house in Mantingfang is a large flat of 280 square meters, fully furnished and priced at around 50 million. Huang Xinyu's clients had lived here before. Of course, it is worth mentioning that there are many single women in Mantingfang. It is said that there is a private passage behind a commercial building that leads directly to Mantingfang, so many mistresses with no name or status like to live here. However, when Huang Xinyu heard the gossip of the company's people at that time, she just listened casually. It was not until she investigated Songwen that she knew that there were really many lovers of rich people here. There are young and beautiful girls, charming women in their early 30s, and all kinds of people. It was through these people that Huang Xinyu met Songwen. The car arrived at the gate of Mantingfang community. The guard at the gate had already known Huang Xinyu. Huang Xinyu had come to Mantingfang community many times before to do beauty treatments for the owners and recommend new products. She was also good-looking and sweet-mouthed, so she was naturally remembered. "Let the person in directly," the guard nodded to Huang Xinyu. Huang Xinyu also nodded, and then drove directly to the garage. A little while after Huang Xinyu went in, Xie Tingzhu's car had also arrived outside Mantingfang, but he did not go in, but found a place outside to park and wait. In Mantingfang, Huang Xinyu parked the car, took out the cosmetics gift box she had prepared from the co-pilot seat, and then took out a silver box made of aluminum from the trunk, very carefully. She walked towards the elevator with the things and pressed the 7th floor where Songwen's home was. When the elevator opened again, Huang Xinyu came to the door of Songwen's house and then pressed the doorbell. The sound of ding dong made Songwen inside wave her hand impatiently and let the nanny open the door. Song Wen was still frightened by the fact that someone caught her in the villa yesterday. Fortunately, her son was sensible and knew how to protect her as a mother. After she followed her husband out, she was a little worried that her son Su Yunhan would be bullied, but she heard her husband Su Liangzi say that her son had offended someone, so he was beaten and released. These days, everyone is a businessman who knows the law, and no one dares to commit crimes such as imprisonment. They also said that since they released the couple, they would definitely release their son. Song Wen has never worried about life. After her son became more sensible, he cooked and earned money for Song Wen. Later, he met her husband Su Liangzi again, and he was no longer short of money. Every day, he just did beauty treatments or went shopping. He didn't know about Su Liangzi and Su Yunhan's work and business. She felt that it was what men should do. As a woman, she just needed to take care of the family. So what happened yesterday was very serious, but after Su Liangzi's comfort, Song Wen was not so worried about her son. It was normal to offend people in the business world and be beaten, or to be forced to drink. Her son also came back with injuries after going abroad with her husband. These were all symbols of a successful man. Therefore, after a night, although Song Wen was no longer frightened, she was still a little unhappy. The nanny came to the door and opened it, and found that the visitor was someone she knew. Ms. Huang. Huang Xinyu smiled at the nanny. Sister Huang, I'm here to see Ms. Su. Our company has newly developed the most powerful anti-aging essence. It will take effect in 30 minutes after applying it. Thinking that Ms. Su is our company's most valuable customer, I came directly to visit her and brought some small gifts. Please help tell Ms. Su. That's right, the nanny and outsiders thought that Song Wen and Su Liangzi were husband and wife, so they naturally called Song Wen Ms. Su. This made Song Wen very happy, even though she lost her last name. Okay, wait a moment, I'll notify Madame Su. Nanny Wang knew that Song Wen loved beauty. After all, she was almost 50 years old this year, and she could still maintain such a good appearance. Naturally, she spent a lot on beauty. Wang knew that Song Wen spent 6 or 7 million yuan on her face and body alone every year. Song Wen was sitting on the sofa drinking beauty tea. After her husband left yesterday, he specifically told her not to call him this week. So Song Wen was even more unhappy. Thinking of the woman outside her husband, she felt sick to death. Madame Su, it's Miss Huang from the beauty company outside. She came to our house last time. She said she brought the company's new products and wanted to come to your house for you to try. Hearing that the surname was Huang, Song Wen immediately thought of Huang Xinyu, and then she had a good face. Let her come in. As she said that, she got up from the sofa and sat more upright. She had heard that Huang Xinyu's man had not remarried for almost 20 years after his death. He lived alone with his son and daughter. If she didn't give her any charity, because of the business, Huang Xinyu can't afford to support the 2 children in that family. 6 months ago in the community, she accidentally met a neighbor who mentioned Huang Xinyu and said that Huang Xinyu's products were good but not good enough. Song Wen then found someone to get Huang Xinyu's contact information. After using Huang Xinyu's company's products, she really looked younger. Phew. Huang Xinyu came in carrying things and saw Song Wen sitting on the sofa. Ms. Su, I haven't seen you for half a month. Your complexion is getting better and better. Not only is your skin whiter, but it also looks more delicate and smooth. I think you will definitely be fine even if you don't use our company's products. I can have skin that Mr. Su can't put down. When she smiled, her peach blossom eyes were very gentle at this time, coupled with the sweetness of her 2 dimples, it was a gentle beauty that was completely non-aggressive. Xiao Huang, you know how to praise me. Every time you praise me like a fairy descending from heaven, I have to believe it. If it weren't for your company's products, would I have such good skin? But I just love to hear you. Tell me, What good things did you bring me this time? Song Wen's eyes and brows were smiling happily, with a bit of complacency. Now that she had a husband to pamper her and a son to lead, she felt that it was very miserable for a woman without a man. Look at Song Wen. Although her husband disappeared after she got pregnant, but now that her son has grown up, doesn't her husband only have the two of them in his heart? As for the eldest lady and chairman of the Shen family, they are all stepping stones for future sons and will be stepped on by them sooner or later. Mrs. Su, what I bring to you this time is the anti-wrinkle essence newly developed by our company. As long as it is applied for 30 minutes, a person's eye, tail and neck wrinkles can disappear without a trace. Of course, I know your skin is the best and you don't have any wrinkles, but this skin needs to be taken care of in advance to fight aging, right? When recommending products, Huang Xinyu was a bit like a lotus flower. As soon as she said it, Song Wen's heart was moved. Then he greeted Huang Xinyu to open the cosmetics he brought, and then tried them on his hands carefully. This new life number 1 is designed to rejuvenate people and make women beautiful from the inside out. Not only can it be used on the face, but this cream specially developed by me can be used on every part of the body. Apply it wherever you want, leaving you with flawless, baby smooth skin. Continuing to talk about her products, Song Wen smelled the faint fragrance in the air and looked at the condition of her hands after applying it, and she was even more happy. Then I want this life number 1, money is not an issue. Looking at this whole set of products, although there are bottles and cans, they are all 10 ml and up to 20 ml. The more delicate the products, the more expensive they are. I know that Mr. Su and Mrs. Su have the best relationship and love you the most. Mr. Su is willing to buy whatever you want, not to mention you have a filial son. I saw Su Yunhan's photo on the wall behind the sofa. Song Wen selected the most handsome photo of her son and printed it and hung it on the wall. Originally, she wanted to hang a family photo, but Su Liangzi didn't allow it, so she could only hang it. It's my son's, but every time someone comes over, it's great to be able to praise my son. Is it true? But my son is promising. Now he has started a mining company from scratch. I heard someone said that you have a pair of twin children. Are they still in college this year? When they graduate, if they can't find a suitable job, just come to me and I will ask my son to arrange a job for your son, but this girl is not easy to arrange. Song Wen was still proud and showed off her son. At least in front of outsiders, Su Yunhan was a self-made company boss and worthy of admiration. Yes, 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 Mrs. Su, don't worry. If something really happens to me, I will definitely come to your son's door in person. For my children, I dare to do anything. You said that we, as mothers, isn't that what it is? Huang Xinyu raised her eyes and glanced at Su Yunhan, saying this, her expression was cold when she lowered her head. That's true. I used to take care of my son by myself. Now that my son has grown up and is successful, my son's father and I got back together. If it weren't for my family, Yunhan, who is very successful, I wouldn't be able to live this good life now. Some women seem to be like this. Their lives revolve around their sons and husbands, even if they know that this husband is actually the legal husband on someone else's marriage certificate. The two chatted a few more words about their daily routine. The nanny, Sister Wang, went to work. When there were only 2 people left in the hall, Song Wen lowered her voice. Do you still have the thing you gave me last time? My husband used it and it was great. I want to buy some more. The things she mentioned are things that can make people energetic. Except for cosmetics, Huang Xinyu accidentally let it slip that she had this, and Song Wen would buy it for Su Liangzi every time. No more this time, wait until next time. After all, the good stuff I gave you is good. I can't get it without the raw materials, but don't worry, I brought you good stuff this time. As Huang Xinyu spoke, she put on medical gloves and opened the silver box she brought, revealing the contents inside, a delicate and gorgeous scented candle that looked ambiguously pink and seemed to have flower petals inside. Look at this, isn't it much easier to use than what I gave you before? As long as you click it when the time comes, it will definitely work. When Songwen heard this, her eyes lit up, and she immediately picked up the scented candle and started looking at it. After a while, Songwen decided to swipe her card. Huang Xinyu came with a POS machine, so after taking the card, she started swiping. Drop. The card swipe was unsuccessful. It shows that your secondary card has been locked. Huang Xinyu was stunned for a moment, and then handed the card over. MRSU, it seems that your card cannot be used. Songwen also saw it, but didn't think much about it. She just thought that the woman in her husband's family was checking the accounts, so she took out her card. Brush it. This time the card was swiped successfully, and there were hundreds of thousands of items in it, the most expensive one being the aromatherapy. After the goods were sold, Huang Xinyu left with the box. Songwen asked the nanny Wang's wife to send Huang Xinyu to the door. When the door here was closed, Huang Xinyu lowered her head and walked forward, with an inexplicable and cruel look on her face. Where can I still be as gentle and fawning as before? She went directly downstairs to the garage, put the silver box in the trunk, and then drove away from Man Tingfang. When they came out far away, the guard had already opened the door, and Huang Xinyu drove out. Not far outside Man Tingfang, Xieting's whose black BMW was next to him. When Huang Xinyu drove 200 meters away and there was a curved intersection below, Xieting Zhou spoke. Stop it. So the black BMW started quickly and stopped directly in front of the white Mercedes-Benz. Huang Xinyu frowned, but she was not in a hurry. She stopped the car and waited for the other person to move. She was not a road rager, but the other person stopped there completely motionless. Huang Xinyu was a little angry, so she turned around to see who was sitting in the car. After just one glance, she was stunned. Even if it was just a glimpse, Huang Xinyu still saw the face that was exactly the same as her husband's when he was young. Huang Xinyu's head was immediately buzzing. Before she could react, she had already got out of the car and headed towards the car. The black BMW rushed past, and when she stood in front of the car, she saw the man inside through the front glass. Green, full of youthful flavor, the face of the man is exactly the same as in the memory. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Good man, he has a golden finger. Author, Zhanghu Buletin Jian. Chapter 29. Xieting Zhou was sitting in the passenger seat and was looking up at Huang Xinyu, who was standing at the front of the car. After such a long time, Huang Xinyu's appearance in his memory had become more mature, but facing the pair of belts with a little angry peach blossom eyes, Xieting Zhou sat there, and suddenly felt that his heartbeat was out of his control. They met when they were children, fell in love when they were teenagers, protected each other in the orphanage, and served as each other's weaknesses and armor. In the end, he was even willing not to go to college, just to make Huang Xinyu's college career better. Looking at Huang Xinyu's eyes that seemed to be about to get angry, Xieting Zhou suddenly thought of a scene in his memory. It was Huang Xinyu's freshman year. He secretly stopped going to college. He worked odd jobs for a month and earned 3,000 yuan. He gave it to Huang Xinyu with great joy, wanting to tell his beloved Huang Xinyu, he can support her in college, and she doesn't have to be so tired or busy in school. But what greeted him was Huang Xinyu's slap after seeing the 3,000 yuan. That slap hurt, and his face hurt, but it was not as painful as Huang Xinyu's tears. Huang Xinyu had tears in her eyes and beat him mercilessly. The children in the orphanage understood better that only by going to school can they change a person's future, and also understood what it would be like to give up the future for one person. You can't expect a girl from an orphanage to be so delicate and weak that she won't fight for it, and a girl like that won't survive in an orphanage. Huang Xinyu finally saw clearly the face that looked exactly like her husband when she was young. She almost stood there trembling, her head buzzing in confusion, trying to make sure that this man really looked exactly like her former husband, and her eyes turned red when she seemed to be old enough to be her husband's son. Her roaring head finally calmed down, and she left the car, came to the passenger door, and knocked on the window politely. The car was parked there, and Huang Yu, the housekeeper who was driving, didn't dare to look at Huang Xinyu. In fact, after knowing that his husband's wife's surname was Huang, Huang Yu discovered why his husband arranged for him to do things every time. This is probably called Jiwu. Just a surname has already given Huangju the first trusted position among several housekeepers. The passenger window was finally rolled down very quickly, but every frame seemed to be in slow motion in Huang Xinyu's eyes. Xie Tingzhou had turned his head and met Huang Xinyu's red eyes. He didn't speak, just looked at the person in front of him who protected him as a child, the person he wanted to protect as a boy, and the person he wanted to spend his life with as a young man. The amber eyes were full of surprise, tenderness, and trust. Huang Xinyu originally knocked down the car window and wanted to ask something, but her mind went blank at this time. She just looked at Xie Tingzhou blankly, her eyes seemed to penetrate the young man in front of her, and she saw her husband who belonged to her 19 years ago. That's what Xie Tunan was like at that time. When he looked at Huang Xinyu, his eyes were always filled with trust. He gave every penny he earned to Huang Xinyu for safekeeping. He said, "Sister, we want to be together happily for the rest of our lives." Obviously Huang Xinyu is 2 years younger than Xie Tunan, but Xie Tunan is always protected by Huang Xinyu, so he also likes to coquettishly call Huang Xinyu sister, on certain special occasions. This is their closest little secret. Just after this glance, tears fell from Huang Xinyu's eyes. The expression on her face was almost blank, but the tears kept rolling down like broken beads. When she cried, she looked like the bright moon, the tears couldn't be stopped at all, and they rolled down in large pieces, which made people feel very distressed. Xie Tingzhou wanted to get out of the car and hug her, but when he was about to open the door, Huang Xinyu blocked the door. This woman, who is now a mother of 2 children, was very heroic. She directly pressed against the car door, and then easily wiped the tears on her face with the back of her hand. All her rationality returned. Although her peach blossom eyes were bright red, they had a bit of murderous intent. "Say, who are you, Xie Tunan? Do you know who this person is?" While she asked Xie Tingzhou if she knew Xie Tunan, she took out a wallet directly from her pocket. This wallet had been used for a long time and was already several years old. When she opened the cream yellow wallet, Xie Tunan's photo inside was still very clear. Xie Tingzhou recognized the wallet, which he gave to Huang Xinyu when she first went to work. Meeting old friends was supposed to be a happy reunion, but unfortunately, Huang Xinyu held the unfolded wallet in one hand and grabbed Xie Tingzhou's collar with the other, almost pulling Xie Tingzhou's head out of the car. "Elder sister!" Xie Tingzhou shouted. He was about to say something, but Huang Xinyu, who was holding his collar, suddenly froze, let go of her hand blankly, and then looked at Xie Tingzhou in front of her in disbelief. "Why do you have this in your neck? What's going on?" As she spoke, she directly grabbed Xie Tingzhou's collar again, and then she was really rude and pulled Xie Tingzhou's collar away, exposing the back of his neck, and then saw the tattoo on the back of his neck. It didn't look like a serious tattoo, because it was a woman's teeth mark. This is Huang Xinyu's tooth mark. After their fates became entangled, Huang Xinyu complained about Xie Tunan's disobedience, so she punished Xie Tunan. On the night when Xie Tunan dropped out of school and received his first salary, Huang Xinyu beat Xie Tunan's face until it was swollen, but she finally gave herself to Xie Tunan and left a deep bite mark on it. At that time, there was blood and a particularly deep tooth mark. Sietunan happened to know how to tattoo, so he found some materials and applied tattoo pigments on himself. After the wound healed, it turned into a blue tooth mark on the back of Sietunan's neck. Later, Sietunan changed his name and even his body became another person. How could he have such a tattoo? For 19 years, Huang Xinyu went to the police station every month to identify her husband. In addition to her husband's height and appearance, the blue bite mark tattoo on his neck was the proof that Huang Xinyu could confirm Sietunan's identity. She never believed that her husband was dead. Rather than saying that her husband was dead, she would rather Sietunan really changed his mind and abandoned her and their children. Even if that was the case, it was better than death. The woman's hand touched Sieting's neck. This body was naturally resynthesized, but it simulated everything in his memory, including the tooth mark tattoo on the back of his neck. Perhaps Huang Xinyu could easily let Sieting Zhou prove his identity without DNA. How could this happen? Why do you have this tooth mark? The size and color of it were the same as in her memory. Huang Xinyu couldn't believe her eyes. She slapped Sieting's neck twice anxiously, making his neck red. The sobs in her voice seemed to collapse in the next moment. Sister, didn't you bite me? You said if I did something wrong again, you would bite me all over with teeth marks, it hurt so much. Sieting Zhou didn't feel any pain, but let Huang Xinyu slap him. He said the love words that only Huang Xinyu and he knew, which made Huang Xinyu stop her actions in an instant. The next moment, Huang Xinyu pulled back her hand that was slapping Sieting Zhou. She seemed to be startled, but Sieting Zhou held her hand. Huang Xinyu, I'm not dead, I'm back again, and this time I seem to have made a big mistake, hit me, I want you to hit me. He pulled Huang Xinyu's hand, but Huang Xinyu shrank back, and she shook her head in disbelief. The man in front of her looked exactly like the one in the photo, but this man called her name and said words that only her husband knew. But the photo of her husband was taken 19 years ago, and her husband had been missing for 19 years. How could he look so young? You recognized me, right? You know who I am, right? This time it was Sieting Zhou who pulled Huang Xinyu's hand. Huang Xinyu couldn't pull back, and could only let this familiar yet strange hand hold her hand tightly. Huang Xinyu recognized her husband's voice. Even after 19 years, she could still identify his voice at once. After her husband disappeared, Huang Xinyu not only kept the photos well, but also played Sietunan's voice on her mobile phone over and over again. She could recognize her husband's voice with her eyes closed. Sietunan, are you really Sietunan? She finally relaxed and stopped struggling. She looked at Sieting's appearance carefully with her eyes, and then as if she suddenly thought of something, she approached the car window without hesitation again. Half of her body was in the car window, her two hands had already waved away Sieting's hands, and then quickly pulled open Sieting's white shirt to see the mole on his chest. In addition to the tooth mark tattoo bitten by herself, even the mole on his chest was exactly the same. Huang Xinyu had to admit that the person in front of her might really be her husband who had been missing for many years. She forgot to cry for a moment and instinctively slapped Sieting Zhou in the face. She had never been a gentle person. This slap hurt a lot, but Sieting Zhou did not hide. He knew that his sister had beaten him, which meant that she had forgiven him. When she saw the young man in front of her was still happy after being beaten, Huang Xinyu finally couldn't help crying. This time, her voice was full of grievances and accusations. Sietunan, where have you been for so many years? Don't you want it? Don't you want the bright moon and the stars? Sietunan, do you know that I have been looking for you for 19 years? You don't know how afraid I am that you will die. Sietunan, do you know how much I miss you? She finally broke down and cried, and Sieting Zhou immediately opened the car door and got out of the car. This time, he was finally able to obey his instinct and hold the woman he loved in his arms. He hugged Huang Xinyu tightly, pressed her in his arms, and apologized in a low voice. "Sister, I know I was wrong. I promise, I will never leave you again." Good man, he has a golden finger. Author, Zhanghu Buletin Jian. Chapter 30. In the end, Huang Xinyu was pressed into Xie Tinghu's arms and cried. Even though she was hugged, she kept beating Xie Tinghu's back, as if this could vent her pain and sadness. Seeing this, Huang Yu quickly arranged for people to drive away Huang Xinyu's car. Huang Xinyu was in a hurry when she came down. The car keys were all on top, so the two cars quickly drove away. There was a cafe on the side of the road. Huang Yu had arranged to book it. Xie Tingzhou walked to the cafe with Huang Xinyu in his arms. Standing at the door was the housekeeper Xiaojiakai. "Sir, the place has been cleared." Xie Tingzhou nodded and went in with Huang Xinyu in his arms. There was a private room inside this coffee shop. He went directly to the private room under the leadership of Xiaojiakai. Water was already placed inside. When Xiaojiakai left, the entire private room was extremely quiet. All the housekeepers were waiting outside. Only then did Huang Xinyu realize how embarrassing she was. She was hugged almost all the way by Xie Tunan. At this time, she struggled out of Xie Tinghu's arms. Huang Xinyu's eyes were red. But at least the tears were gone. Her wet tears made the shirt on Xie Tinghu's chest wet several times. Looking at the young husband in front of her, Huang Xinyu felt a little uncomfortable. "Tell yourself, what happened all these years? Where have you been? Why hasn't your appearance changed?" Others couldn't recognize Xie Tunan, but Huang Xinyu could. Looking at his appearance and listening to his voice, Huang Xinyu could recognize every inch of Xie Tunan's body. During the years when her husband disappeared, no matter what rumors were outside, Huang Xinyu would never believe it. She completely believed in her feelings and the love between herself and her husband. She absolutely did not believe that her husband had given up on their family and ran away. They are all orphans and have finally found a family. How can they give up so easily? "Xinyu, thank you for still being willing to listen to me." Xie Tingzhou thought he would be beaten violently by Huang Xinyu, but he didn't expect that it would only be this time. Although his face was swollen and hot, he was still in a happy mood. Being beaten and scolded by Huang Xinyu is actually equivalent to being forgiven by Huang Xinyu. He looked at her with the same trusting look as before, which made Huang Xinyu feel a little distressed. After all, she couldn't help but look at half of his red face. "Does it hurt?" She wanted to touch it, but in the end she didn't reach out. "It doesn't hurt. Why did it hurt when you hit me?" Xie Tingzhou saw her hand that was about to reach out and then retract, so he directly pulled it over and held Huang Xinyu's hand in his, interlocking their fingers like before. "I know everything I say next is ridiculous, but I believe that if there is anyone in this world who believes in me, then that person must be you, Xinyu. In fact, I only woke up recently. When I was going home, I accidentally fell off the Shangjing Bridge. After that, I felt like my brain was all muddled. When I woke up, I was in the UK. It is said that a couple saved me and arranged for me to recuperate in the UK. When I woke up, only the housekeeper was left by my side. The housekeeper told me that the couple was an earl and his wife. They left me a lot of property. After I inherited their property, I remembered it vaguely. My identity, but I didn't expect that 19 years have passed. If it were just such a lie, I'm afraid no one in the world would believe it, but with Xie Tinghu's face that looks exactly like that of before, no one would doubt it." Xie Tingzhou took Huang Xinyu's hand and put it on his face. "Look now, I'm still exactly the same as I was then. That's because I received treatment after I fell into a coma. When I woke up, I thought it was only a short time. But later I realized that 19 years had passed. I came back from abroad immediately, but the 19 years I missed with my sister will never come back." These words are true feelings. Xie has the strongest love in this body. When it is at its most abundant, it changes into another face. And his body now simulated by the system naturally has the hottest love without changing color. Emotion. Huang Xinyu looked into these familiar eyes and could naturally feel the emotion of being loved. When she saw Xie pitiful expression, she immediately responded. It'll be nice if you come back, it'll be nice if you come back. She could never do anything to him, even if she missed 19 years, but after meeting this person again, Huang Xinyu still loved him. I have changed my name now to Xie Tingzhou. My sister can just call me Tingzhou. In fact, after I came back this time, I first investigated the situation at home. After all, I have been missing for so many years. I really can't imagine that you, sister, are alone. How did you bring the bright moon and the galaxy together? I'm sorry, I'm not a good father, nor a good father. Xie Tingzhou did not hide his investigation, because perhaps hiding these things from Xie Jiayu and Xie Xing came from his father's love, but if he concealed them from his wife beside him, it would be a distrust of his wife. If a couple wants to live a long life together, they must have no secrets or have common secrets. Huang Xinyu was originally immersed in the emotion of her husband's return, but when she heard her husband's words, her face turned pale. She retracted her hand instantly and her voice was stumbling. You know? You know everything? Jiayu's matter. She could hardly speak, her face was full of distress and embarrassment, and her eyes were about to turn red. Xie Tingzhou immediately took her hand, only to find that Huang Xinyu's hand was trembling, or in other words, her whole body was shaking. Trembling. No, I'm not a good mother. I don't deserve such a good child. She could no longer control her heart, so Xie Tingzhou immediately hugged her into his arms, then gently patted her back and stroked along her spine, soothing Huang Xinyu's uncontrollable body. Xinyu, don't be excited, don't be nervous. I want to tell you that I know all this, but I have rescued Jiayu, and I have also begun to punish the bad guys. Don't be excited, don't be excited. Huang Xinyu has congenital heart disease and has had 2 surgeries so far, so Xie Tingzhou is also afraid that something will happen to her. But when she thinks about Huang Xinyu's strange behavior in the investigation these days, what kind of determination does she have to do such a thing? What happens after that? What would she do if everything really happened as she thought? Xie Tingzhou was heartbroken when he thought of this result. He hugged Huang Xinyu tightly and kept repeating it. Jiayu is safe now. Jiayu is free now. Don't be afraid, don't get excited, calm down. Under the comfort of such a gentle voice as before, Huang Xinyu's rapidly beating heart finally began to normalize, and her complexion began to slowly improve. She lay on Xie Tingzhou's shoulder for a while before raising her head from him. I'm really useless. As a mother, I let Jiayu suffer such a thing, and it was all because of me. This time she was really wronged. Her eyes were red and she was crying. She was wronged and embarrassed. She had no pretense at all. She cried in pain and misery. I don't even know when this happened. It was already very late when I found out. I don't know what to do. Husband, I really don't know what to do. I can't save Jiayu. Huang Xinyu was choking and crying, her face was full of confusion, tears and runny nose were all on her face, she looked really ugly, it was the most embarrassing situation for a woman. I secretly investigated Su Yunhan and found out about his mother Song Wen and his father Su Liangzi. Su Liangzi is the son-in-law of the Shen Jewelry Group. I thought that if Shen Yan knew about this matter, Su Yunhan would not be easy. I went to secretly send news to Shen's company, but the news was gone. A woman who works hard in society understands the power of money in society. Her poor and weak daughter was deceived by a man who was almost 30 years old, humiliated and imprisoned. As a mother, Huang Xinyu could not even investigate blatantly, but even secretly. Moreover, it was Huang Xinyu's illness that caused all of this, so her daughter, in order to conceal it from her, even made Huang Xinyu not sleep well for half a year after learning about it. She suffered from insomnia all night and shed tears for no reason. She felt like she was going crazy. When Xie saw his wife in front of him looking so embarrassed and pitiful, how could he not feel distressed? His eyes became red and filled with tears. He stretched out his hand to wipe Huang Xinyu's tears, but Huang Xinyu shook her head, and then suddenly held Xie Tinghu's hand tightly. Her eyes seemed to have lost their baby. The young wolf is ruthless and crazy. So I knew I couldn't deal with Su Yunhan by myself, so I asked someone to help me get to know Song Wen. You know, I majored in chemistry, and I know how to make cosmetics. I made a lot of cosmetics for Song Wen, and also gave her Su Liangzi prepared it. They destroyed my bright moon. I will destroy them too. I will destroy their family. She was about to lose her mind due to the torture of her daughter. At this moment, Xie Tingzhou held her tightly in her arms with one hand. She held Xie Tingzhu's other hand with both hands, but suddenly bit her. The severe pain made Xie Tingzhou grit his teeth. Soon the back of Xie Tingzhu's hand started to bleed. It hurt, but he didn't feel distressed. He allowed Huang Xinyu to bite him, knowing that this matter was about to drive this woman crazy. After waiting for a long time, Huang Xinyu let go of her mouth. Her lips were red with Xie Tingzhu's blood, and her eyes became a little dull. Look at the husband in front of you. Xie Tingzhou felt that his heart was going to break at this moment. He leaned forward slightly and pressed his lips against Huang Xinyu's, which was stained with red. His voice was low and choked. What about you? Sister, what should you do? If that family really got the fate they deserved, what about Huang Xinyu? What should she do? Huang Xinyu was pressed against Xie Tingzhu's forehead, and their breath seemed to be intertwined. She just looked at her husband quietly for a while, feeling that everything that happened today was like a big dream. This seems to be the best dream in the world. Thinking like this, she stretched out her arms and put her arms around Xie Tingzhu's neck. Then she followed Xie Tingzhu's example and leaned over to dye Xie Tingzhu's lips red. You know I have congenital heart disease. If I want to die from the disease, I have thousands of ways. After she takes care of the Su family, as long as she dies, her daughter will be free.